Modern life has found a brilliant way to make expensive things feel harmless. It takes a large number, cuts it into smaller pieces, and hands it back to you as a monthly payment. That couch is not $3,000. It is only $89 a month. That phone is not $1,400. It is just $36 a month. That software stack is not $400 a year. It is only a few little charges that barely register. That car is not a machine that will eat $50,000 and then politely lose value in your driveway. It is just $642 a month, which somehow sounds less offensive when you say it quickly. This is one of the strangest things about adult financial life. People who would never hand over $5,000 in cash for something will calmly agree to give away that same money 1 month at a time for years, because monthly numbers do not feel like spending. They feel like weather. And that is where the trap starts. A lot of people think they are behind financially because they do not make enough money. Sometimes that is true, but there is another version of this problem that gets much less attention. A lot of people make decent money, even good money, and still never build real traction because they are thinking in months while life is charging them in years. Nick here, and today I want to talk about why monthly thinking quietly wrecks people's finances, how it turns expensive decisions into manageable ones, and why a life that looks affordable 1 month at a time can still leave you weirdly underbuilt, underinvested, and much poorer than your income suggests. Why monthly thinking feels so natural. To be fair, people do not think in months because they are stupid. They think in months because life is built that way. Rent is monthly. Insurance is monthly. Phones are monthly. Streaming is monthly. The gym is monthly. Software is monthly. Car payments are monthly. Half the economy now arrives in neat little recurring charges designed to look smaller than the thing itself. So your brain starts evaluating affordability in the same unit. Can I fit this into the month? That question sounds responsible. It sounds adult. It sounds like budgeting. The problem is that can I fit this into the month is not the same question as is this actually a good financial decision? A lot of bad financial decisions fit into the month beautifully. That is why people make them. Monthly affordability is a very weak standard. It does not ask what the thing costs in total. It does not ask what other fixed obligations are already attached to your life. It does not ask what happens if your income changes, if a bad month hits, or if 3 more small monthly decisions stack quietly on top of it. It just asks whether the charge can slide past your nervous system without causing an immediate scene. That is not a high bar. The couch, the phone, the car, and the weird little death of big numbers. Let's use a few ordinary examples. Someone needs a couch. They walk into the store. The actual price is heavy. It feels expensive. It demands a decision. Then the salesperson says, it's only $89 a month. Now the conversation changes. It is no longer about whether this couch is worth $3,000. It is about whether $89 can hide inside a paycheck. And for many people, the answer is yes. Especially when the payment does not start right away, especially when the room is empty, especially when adulthood keeps inventing situations where furniture somehow becomes an emergency. Same with the phone. A $1,400 phone sounds ridiculous to a lot of people when said directly. 36 a month sounds like nothing. 36 is the kind of number people accidentally spend because they were tired and walked into the wrong store thirsty. Now add the laptop, the upgraded watch, the fitness app, the second streaming service, the nicer internet plan, the storage unit you swear is temporary, the premium whatever that made 1 week slightly easier and then quietly became permanent. None of these things are crazy alone. That is why they survive. Monthly thinking removes the emotional weight of the full cost. It lets expensive things enter your life in harmless-looking pieces, and once they are in, they stop feeling like choices and start feeling like the natural cost of existing as your current self. Then one day you look around and realize your income is not financing wealth. It is financing subscriptions to your own present identity. What the math looks like when you stop being polite about it. Let's say someone has the following completely ordinary monthly obligations layered into their life. Phone financing, $36. Gym, $49. Streaming and digital subscriptions, $58. Buy now, pay later furniture and household stuff, $97. Software, storage, and little convenience services, $45. Car payment upgrade over what they actually needed, $240. A slightly nicer apartment than their finances really wanted, $300 extra. That adds up to $825 a month. Now, when these were added one at a time, none of them felt fatal. A better phone does not feel like a life decision. The nicer place feels deserved. The software helps. The subscriptions are small. The couch is already here, so now it just feels like a number. But $825 a month is $9,900 a year. That is not a cute little lifestyle tax anymore. That is real money. Invest $9,900 a year for 20 years at 8%, and you are looking at roughly $453,000. That is the part people do not feel while the monthly charges are happening. Nobody sees $45 for a cloud service and thinks, interesting, I have just made a tiny contribution to the long-term erosion of my asset base. Nobody sees the upgraded apartment and says, fantastic, I have traded away a mid-six-figure future outcome for slightly nicer countertops and a more convincing version of adulthood. But that is exactly how the math behaves. And the math does not care that the individual charges felt reasonable at the time. Monthly thinking is how people pre-spend their raises. This is where the problem becomes really dangerous. Once people start using monthly affordability as their main decision filter, every increase in income starts getting claimed before it has a chance to become strength. A raise comes in. What happens? The car gets slightly nicer. The apartment gets slightly better. The convenience stack gets slightly bigger. The social budget loosens. The subscriptions multiply. The life becomes smoother, more polished, more upgraded, more appropriate for the new income level. Nothing explodes. In fact, the person often feels like they are finally doing what they worked for. Then 6 months later, they are making more and somehow still feel structurally ordinary. The emergency fund is still underwhelming. The investing is still weaker than it should be. The margin is still thin. The future still feels oddly underfunded. That is not bad luck. That is what happens when your raises arrive in annual terms and your lifestyle expands in monthly terms. The new income gets translated into recurring obligations before it ever has a chance to become leverage. A lot of adults are not earning more and getting stronger. They are earning more and getting smoother. Those are not the same outcome. Why monthly numbers are so psychologically persuasive. Monthly numbers have 3 qualities the brain loves. First, they are small enough to feel non-threatening. A $600 payment sounds much less serious than a $48,000 commitment. An extra $30 sounds trivial. $99 sounds manageable. $13.99 sounds like something you should not even be morally required to think about. Second, they are repetitive enough to become invisible. Once something hits your account every month, it stops feeling like a decision. It becomes part of the wallpaper. Wallpaper is expensive, but nobody stares at it after the first week. Third, monthly numbers are easier to emotionally defend. People can explain them away. It's just this amount. It barely changes the budget. It's not that much more. It's worth it for what I get. All of those statements are technically possible. None of them answer the more important question, which is whether that monthly choice helps build a stronger life or just a more expensive one. This is why people can be very intentional in isolated purchases and still be strangely weak financially. They are watching the big one time, spending while recurring charges quietly walk out the back door with the future. The total cost people live differently. There is a particular shift that happens when someone stops evaluating life 1 month at a time and starts thinking in total cost. The phone is no longer $36 a month. It is $1,300 plus tax plus replacement habit. The car is no longer $642 a month. It is years of payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance, depreciation, and the opportunity cost of what that money could have become. The apartment is no longer just a rent number. It is the rent plus the effect it has on everything else you can or cannot build. That shift changes the emotional flavor of consumption. A lot of things that look harmless in monthly form become hard to justify in total cost form. And that is exactly why the market works so hard to keep you focused on the month. Because months are emotionally digestible. Years are sobering. The hidden damage to your financial identity. There is another layer here that matters. Monthly thinking changes who people believe they are financially. Someone making decent money with a stack of manageable monthly charges often feels more secure than they really are because the current month works. The machine clears. Bills get paid. The whole structure stays upright. That can create a false sense of financial adulthood. The person starts to think, I'm doing pretty well. I can afford things. I'm not struggling like I used to. Maybe. But if your income stopped for 3 months, if one larger emergency hit, or if a major fixed cost rose, how quickly would that confidence get exposed as a cash flow costume? This is the danger of the monthly payment illusion. It lets people feel stronger than their actual reserves, assets, and optionality justify. They are not rich. They are successfully making this month's arrangement work. That is different. A lot of people are living inside payment structures they can maintain only under stable conditions, and then interpreting that maintenance as proof of financial strength. Real strength is not that the month clears. Real strength is that the month clearing is no longer the whole story. The places where monthly thinking hurts the most. There are certain categories where this mindset does the most damage. Cars. This is the classic one, because car buying has been completely redesigned around monthly emotional tolerances. People do not buy the car. They buy the payment. Then they stay in the payment mindset so long that the total cost of ownership becomes a kind of forbidden philosophical question nobody wants to reopen. Housing. A slightly nicer place can look easy in monthly terms. In long-term financial terms, it can be a massive permanent claim on cash flow that slows everything else down. Tech and household upgrades. Phones, furniture, home goods, appliances, all of it. Once financing and installment plans enter the room, people stop asking whether they need the thing and start asking whether the month can absorb the charge. Lifestyle subscriptions. These are especially sneaky because each one is small, each one can be defended, and none of them feel like a lifestyle decision even when together they absolutely are. Payment stacking. This is the ugliest version. It is when a person's whole life becomes a pile of individually manageable monthly commitments that collectively leave almost no room for compounding, resilience, or strategic movement. No single line item looks insane. The structure is the problem. How this ruins recovery from bad months. Monthly thinking also makes recovery harder. If your life is already full of recurring obligations that were justified 1 month at a time, then when a bad month hits, there is not much flex left in the system. The payments still arrive. The subscriptions still renew. The upgraded life still wants feeding. Now the person discovers that what felt affordable was actually extremely dependent on nothing going wrong. That is when the illusion breaks. And because the person was thinking in monthly terms, they often do not have strong enough annual or long-term habits built underneath the lifestyle. The emergency fund is lighter than it should be. The investments are weaker than they should be. The debt is stickier than it should be. The whole life was optimized to pass the month, not to absorb impact. That difference becomes obvious the second the calendar gets expensive. What the stronger financial life usually looks like. The people who get stronger financially are usually not obsessing over every dollar in a neurotic way. They are just much harder to trick with monthly framing. They still use monthly budgeting, of course. The month matters. Bills are real. But they do not let monthly affordability serve as the final moral test of whether something is smart. They ask bigger questions. What does this cost over 3 years? What does this do to my fixed expenses? What does this reduce in my investing capacity? What does this commit future paychecks to? Would I still want this if I had to buy it in annual language instead of monthly language? That last question is incredibly clarifying. If someone offered you the same service, product, or upgrade and said, "This is going to cost you $5,400 over the next 3 years," a lot of things that feel totally normal at $150 a month would suddenly look ridiculous. And that is the whole point. The monthly payment illusion works by shrinking decisions until they slide past your standards. A useful reset if you feel this a little too much. If this is making your financial life feel uncomfortably familiar, good. That means it is probably useful. Here is the reset. For the next 2 weeks, stop evaluating optional financial decisions in monthly language. Do not ask, "Can I fit this into the month?" Ask, "What does this cost in a year? What does this cost over the full commitment? What future cash flow does this claim before I have even lived the months it belongs to? What would this money become if I stopped converting every raise and every bit of margin into recurring obligations?" That will not instantly solve everything, but it will break the spell. Because the spell depends on you staying inside the month. The part that should stay with you. A lot of people are not broke because they make one insane financial decision. They are broke because they agree to 100 perfectly reasonable monthly decisions that slowly recruit their future income before it has the chance to become actual strength. That is the monthly payment illusion. It makes expensive things feel normal. It makes recurring charges feel harmless. It makes higher income feel weaker than it should. It makes future wealth invisible, while present consumption feels weirdly easy to defend. And the danger is not that the month stops working. The danger is that it keeps working just well enough to delay the moment where you realize the structure itself is the problem. Because if your financial life only makes sense in monthly fragments, there is a decent chance it does not make much sense at all. And if a decision only feels smart when you refuse to multiply it, it probably is not smart. That's it for this one. If this changed the way you think about it's only this much per month, hit subscribe and share this with someone whose financial life is not being wrecked by one big purchase. It is being gently suffocated by 12 extremely reasonable ones.